Hello, my name is Dahlia,
And I'm Allie.
and welcome to Navigate the Now. Today we have on as guest, we have Oneika Mays, just to give you a
Woohoo.
little bit of her bio. Yes, excited to have her on. Oneika
Yes.
Mays, she is a certified meditation teacher, a registered yoga teacher, is a multi-hyphenate facilitator, and writer who leads with joy, passion, and wisdom. She's a grounded leader with lived experience that centers on mindfulness and transformation. As a Black queer feminist, she brings a poignant lens to building a world that is more compassionate and understanding. With deep roots and knowledge in Buddhist and yogic teachings, Oneika delivers practical applications and authentic connection through her facilitation skills. With openness and vulnerability, she facilitates the space to talk about change and embrace every part of ourselves. She served as a mindfulness coach at Rikers Island Correctional Facility for 4 years and is currently a teacher for Yoga International, an inclusive and accessible online studio with classes designed for every level of practice. Onika's ability to take big ideas and distill them down into understandable and relatable learnings allows her to show up as a conduit for transformation. Onika's memoir, Can You Sit With Me, will be published by HarperOne in March 2026 and will be available for pre-order at the end of June. Welcome, Oneika.
I'm so excited to be here with y'all. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Welcome. Yes. We're so
yeah.
excited you could come, really. And I'll keep us moving real quick here. We do community agreements at the beginning. And Oneika, you are welcome to add a community agreement or add on to a community agreement, however you see fit.
Okay.
And a community agreement for anyone listening for the first time is something that they're just agreements we show up with for each other, to ourselves and to others. So the first one is speaking in draft, knowing that what we say is not a polished thought. We might come back and change again our thoughts or our understandings. Number two is assume everyone is doing their best. Remember, most people have good intentions. Number three, not here to be right, but get it right. Four is present, active listening. And five, be mindful of speaking space and how much time we're taking up. I say to every guest, that's for us, not for the guests. We want to hear everything you have to say.
Yeah.
And Dahlia and I are yappers. I'm a yapper, so I need that rule. Number six is this is a space to learn and grow. And seven is to listen and understand instead of just listening to respond or trying to. And number eight is our most important is to have fun.
Have fun.
So, yeah.
So do you agree with these, Oneika?
I agree with them. And can I just say, I love the first one, speaking in draft. I feel like
Yeah.
that's so cool. I feel like I'm living in draft.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
yeah, that really just hit my heart. I am living in draft too. So that's all subject to change. Thank you for that. I don't have
Yeah.
anything to add.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that living in draft,
Yeah, me too.
you
I like
know?
that too.
Yeah.
So this is going to tie in that speaking in draft. I actually got that community agreement. The first time I heard that was when I was in the yoga teacher training at Sirius Side with Roque. And for the listeners, I met Oneika, I want to say over a year now. It's been over a year. She came in and facilitated one of the classes. It was titled Disrupting with Love. And it was a powerful, powerful class, and I was just so thankful to have you come in. I know that you and Roque, he's a yoga teacher that led the training. I know you both are really close, so it's special to have you on. Like almost kind of feels like a full
Yes.
circle.
It really does. Thank you so much. And of course, something like that would come from Roque. Of course it would.
It would, right?
I love that. I really love that. I have to
Yeah,
text him later. That's
yeah.
fantastic.
Let him know. Um, so, we as we start with every episode with every guest, we want to know a little bit about your story, right? Like what shaped you, what guided you to kind of do the work that you're currently doing. So you can start
Yes.
wherever you'd like in your life, infancy, teenage years, a few years ago, wherever.
Tell us about Oneika.
Ah, okay. Tell you about me. Well, let's start with where I found mindfulness and yoga. I I'm Black and I'm queer. I use she, her pronouns. And I think for a long time, I was uncomfortable in my own skin, even though I don't know if it projected that way all of the time. I think in a lot of ways, I appeared to be confident, maybe guarded, and maybe sometimes even mean. And I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and identifying as queer in a predominantly white neighborhood, even though I didn't come to terms with that until I want to say in, my mid 20s, I had a lot of barriers around my identity and around my heart. And I went to therapy, and I feel like therapy really saved my life. But when I discovered yoga and mindfulness, I think I started to really live and enjoy my life.
Ooh.
And it shifted a lot for me because I could accept myself completely and I could love myself completely and even look back on areas of inhabiting, like self-loathing or shame or internalized homophobia, internalized racism, internalized misogyny, rather than with like cringe. I could say like, well, that's the best I could do at that time.
Right.
And so I could love all of that and sort of move forward with this sense of feeling full and whole. And mindfulness and yoga did that for me. And I think specifically a type of practice that did that was metta or loving kindness. And I found that, I found metta late. I came to this practice really late. I didn't really start practicing yoga consistently until my late 30s, early 40s. Even though I discovered it in my late 20s, I don't think I really committed until I was, just about 40.
I have a question. As someone, I do enjoy meditation and mindfulness, but I have never heard of metta. So
So
perhaps you
metta,
could,
yeah, metta is rooted in Buddhism, and metta is the Pali word for loving kindness. And the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, he was a Tibetan monk teacher. He actually also sat with MLK a lot, and he was an activist. He said it's really just another way to say love. And it's this idea of wishing ourselves and other people well and sending good wishes. And it's both a quality that we can embody and also a meditation that we can do. And as a quality, we embody it because it means unconditional love or this sense of friendliness and open-heartedness. And it's not like mushy or ethereal. It's really open. It's almost compared to like nature, like the sun shining on your heart. It's full. There's no expectations around it. You don't have to do anything to earn it. It's not transactional. It just is. It's just there. And mindfulness, right, is like this idea of being present. And we do that without judgment. And I loved mindfulness. But when I found metta and this openness, metta like really helped me step into this idea of I'm okay. And if I could be okay and connected with myself, I started to see the world a little bit differently too. And metta really changed my life.
And Oneika, you said it was in your 20s that you were introduced to the concept of metta?
I wasn't introduced to metta, I would say, until actually my early 40s.
Oh, early 40s. Okay.
Yeah. I started practicing yoga in my late 20s when I was
got
actually,
it.
I used to work, before I even found mindfulness, I worked in like corporate book selling. I was a bookseller for a really long time, and one of the managers there, she was an Ashtangi, so she practiced yoga. So she introduced me to yoga, even though my parents had practiced yoga. I didn't really practice, so I started practicing, and it shifted something in me, but I don't think I was ready to commit.
Right.
But I really got into meditation because I got a little addicted to yoga. I think a lot of yogis do, right? Like we find this
Yes.
practice and it changes our lives. But if you aren't really open to what you should be using yoga for, because yoga is a contemplative practice, it should help us stay present and think. But I got a little hooked on how it was making me feel. So I started to chase that feeling rather than understanding and appreciating what I should be living with the practice. And I hurt myself because I took it too far. When that happened, I started meditating more because I couldn't practice. And I was like, oh, this is what practice is.
So when you said you hurt yourself, like physically, like you were really
Yeah, I
into the
physically hurt my
poses.
shoulder because I was overdoing it. I found mindfulness and meditation and yoga because I used to live my life on the edges of things. I was always doing too much, doing the most, or not doing anything. And finding a middle, which, studying Buddhism helped me find this idea of the middle. In Buddhism, we talk a lot about the middle road, the middle path. So meditation helped me find that. And so I started to respond to life rather than being so reactionary to things. Yeah, my meditation practice, I like to say that I don't meditate to feel great. I meditate to be with whatever's happening. Like I have lots of joy practices, which help me find joy, but I meditate. So it's like practice for showing up in the world and living my life.
I think that that's a really good highlight, because a lot of times people want to think of meditation or yoga as a way of, okay, well, let's feel better. And from what I'm hearing you say, it's like, let's feel what we're having. Like, let's move through this emotion that we're in. Let's sit into this emotion and move through it. Right.
Absolutely. The first time I meditated, I did feel great. So,
Yeah.
And because I was somebody who used to chase things, I thought that was the feeling I had to chase, the feeling great. And that's what happened with yoga. Like the first time I did yoga, I was like, oh my God, this shit is amazing. And let me do it again and again and again. It was that same idea, right? That chasing that dragon, that good feeling, rather than appreciating the fact that I just need to be here right now with whatever is coming up, even if it's icky, even if it's messy. And that's why I practice. And that took a long time to figure out. And shit, I'm still figuring it out. That's because this is really easy to say, but hard to do.
Yeah. I was going to say, I really resonate with everything you said. I got real deep. I went hard into Ashtanga even. So you said you met an Ashtangi. I was like, oh yeah. And I don't know if I've ever been able to verbalize it like that. I think I was going after that high, and then it became more about I call it mulching. I know that maybe is a weird word. Mulching, like instead of going after the high and feeling good, you mulch when you cut up the wood and it becomes in these little pieces. And maybe that's something I had a meditation teacher say, and it stuck with me. And so I think of it as like processing what, I'm mulching.
Oh, I love that.
I'm like grinding up my wood and making it into something and like laying it out and making something new. So he said that, I was like, oh, it's mulching.
Yes, I love that.
But I've never really realized until you said that, like I was totally chasing a high for a long time as well. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. I chased for a long, and meditation too. I think I chased, and it wasn't until the first time I did metta meditation. So with metta, I didn't mention earlier, when you do metta as a meditation, so metta as a quality is this idea of embodying unconditional friendliness, which is really easy to say, right? Like we all want to do that. We all want to think that, hey, I can be friendly to everyone all the time. And that's really easy to say until somebody pisses you off, right?
Right.
Really easy to say until somebody owes you some money, or they're not paying you back, or somebody cuts you off in traffic, and then it all just goes away.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to practice it. And so as a meditation, we sit and we offer these well wishes, like a gift or an offering, and we do it to ourselves. We say may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be healthy, and may I be free. Or traditionally it's may I live my life with ease, but I like to say, or may I be free. And then we do this for someone we love, and we choose someone who's easy to love. That we don't have a complicated relationship, and we say those same phrases, and then we offer it to a stranger, a familiar stranger, so someone we don't know really well, but we see them, and then we offer it to a difficult person. So we're purposely expanding our circle, getting it wider and wider, and offering these well wishes to other people. And then we offer those same wishes to everybody. So we practice. So when life happens and comes at us, we are able to embody this idea of unconditional friendliness a little bit easier. And when we stumble, we're not as hard on ourselves that we have stumbled, because it is challenging to do.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's all really easy to say, right? It's all really
Yeah.
really easy to say. It's a lot more challenging to do. And I am still on some days, some minutes. Sometimes I'm taking it minute by minute, especially with what's happening in the world right now.
Yeah.
It is very challenging. There are so many difficult people. There are so many difficult situations. But metta is said to be the antidote. The Buddha said that metta is the antidote to fear and malice and ill will. And the more that we offer metta, the more that's there. So it actually never runs out, and we can only increase it by offering it, which I think is helpful.
The class that you led for my yoga teacher training, you titled it Disrupting with Love, which I thought was really awesome, because you don't really put, like, those two words you don't hear them together. That's what I feel like. It's like disrupting our thoughts and how we feel towards other people that we may not necessarily like, right? You don't necessarily need to like somebody to love somebody.
Yes.
Yeah.
I say it all the time, because people are pretty terrible.
Ain't that the truth?
People are challenging. I'm challenging, and you don't have to. We're so caught up in having to like people and agree with what everybody says, and I feel like, especially in this age of social media and these parasocial relationships, it seems to hinge so much on this idea of transactional agreement. I can only be in community with you if I like everything that you're saying, and I just think that's total bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not contingent on whether I agree with you. Now, if you're hurting somebody, that's a different story, right? But nuance, I just feel like, is lost. And we have to be able to have challenging conversations. We have to be able to critique. And if we're centering humanity, and if we're centering love, when we do that, we can have these conversations, and we can call each other in rather than calling people out. And no, it's like these community agreements, but we're coming from a different place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel like that's part of when you mention of kind of like the love going outward towards other people, that's kind of part of it, right? Is that grace that you're offering them.
And we have
practice.
to do it with ourselves first, right? Like, because you can't change people, you can't make people do things, but it starts with me. I have to take care of myself. Lama Rod Owens, and I can't remember if it was in the New Saints, his book, The New Saints, or if it was in Love and Rage, but he says, we do our own work so we aren't work for other people. And when I know, right? When he said that, I just wanted to look across. I was like, I feel attacked. And that's why we do this, right? I often teach from this place of I, right? Like, I've studied and I've done all this stuff, so I know what I'm talking about. But I can only tell you what's worked for me. And you have to do your work so you know what works for you. And I don't do this just so I'm showing up for myself, but I'm doing this because I'm showing up for us, because that's my responsibility as a person in the world, is to do my work so I can show up.
Yeah. This quote that I want to say, see if it sounds familiar to you or not. Joy in love does not bypass pain or discomfort. Instead, it makes space for everything to exist. That was you.
I
Quote
still
from you.
believe that
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. I think we get so caught up in trying to make things feel good. And I get it, because there's so much that is challenging. But if we don't allow ourselves to acknowledge the discomfort that is happening, not just ourselves, but for other people, we can't turn away the discomfort that we see happening for other people, because all that does is block ourselves off from our own hearts. and we start to wall ourselves off. And that stops us from being able to step into joy, because we will only be bypassing things if we aren't acknowledging everything that's going on. So this idea of being present, of being awake and alive to the experiences of all people, and being rooted in love, the two are important, right? They're connected.
Right.
So we can be joyful when we're whole, but we don't have to meditate to be joyful. But we have to acknowledge that, sometimes things are shitty, and we can find joy when we are helping other people to get rid of their discomfort too. Because if you're suffering, I'm suffering.
Right.
Yes.
As yoga teachers, y'all know, Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu, may all beings everywhere be happy and free. Like so many teachers used to say that in a yoga class. And it sounds really nice. And people, I think, just say it all the time without really thinking about that. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. I think that even says that all beings everywhere are not happy and free.
Right.
Yes.
Or we wouldn't have to say it, right? So that means if you are practicing yoga or any contemplative practice, you've got to be doing something about that.
Yeah.
You can't just think about it.
Yeah. It's that spiritual bypassing that has been so prominent.
Right. Saying it isn't enough.
Yeah.
You have to do something about it. And that can start with yourself. Well, what am I doing
Right.
to show up in the world? Even living your life as an example by saying, I'm thinking about these things. I'm taking action and recognizing when I've been avoiding discomfort. That even becomes an example for other people to see.
Yeah.
Standing in your own truth, or speaking up when you see somebody suffering, or offering a hand to end the suffering of other people, or honoring your own boundaries if somebody's been harming you. All of those things are powerful steps that can shift a narrative and disrupt harmful systems, because people make systems go. And so I think to dismantle them, we have to take different steps to break them.
Yeah, absolutely. So with this dismantling the system, which obviously, hard, but I want to take this conversation. You gave us a really good foundation about where you're coming from when you show up and when you're leading and teaching classes for yourself. You were experienced as a mindful coach at Rikers Island. So talk about speaking with those who are hurt, and who are being looked at as less than, or criminals, right? Tell us how you got into that work.
So when I became a yoga teacher, I come from a family of folks who've always been thinking about social justice. My grandfather was a union organizer. He was an advisor for the Black Panthers. He was a communist. My grandmother was politically active. So it was kind of always in the background, like this is who we are and what we do. And so when I walked away from the career that I had and started teaching yoga, I had a conversation with my cousin actually about like what I wanted to do with yoga. And she was the one who actually mentioned, well, why aren't you teaching in a jail? And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't know, but I should. So I don't have a sexy story. It was just that. And so I went to the Google and said yoga in prisons in New York, and found a nonprofit and started volunteering there. And I volunteered for about 6 years, and then started even facilitating and co-facilitating trainings for yoga teachers who wanted to do that work, because the yoga was, we call it trauma-informed now, but if I'm really talking about it, I think it's just teaching yoga at its roots. So I was teaching yoga and meditation as a volunteer, but then in 2018, I was offered a full-time role to work for New York Health and Hospitals, which is the agency which serves the folks on Rikers Island, to be a mindfulness coach. And I worked alongside two other incredible human beings to help spearhead a wellness program at the women's jail at Rikers Island. So we served women, we served trans folks and non-binary folks, and we also served men who didn't feel safe in the men's jails at Rikers Island. And our program was to offer holistic services to folks, it was a volunteer program. So I offered mindfulness and yoga, and someone else offered wellness coaching, and somebody else was an acupuncturist. And I worked there full time, so I was there 5 days a week. And folks could come sign up for mindfulness. I had my own office. It was like having my own mindfulness practice inside Rikers. And I worked with folks one-on-one. And it was I think individually, it was a powerful experience. Upon reflection and going in every day, you are inside the belly of the beast. And I found myself getting institutionalized and suffering from a lot of vicarious trauma, and also just bearing witness to the amount of suffering. And as someone who believes that prisons and jails as they exist should not exist, so I'm firmly rooted in abolition and how we need to change that. It really started to wear in my soul and burn me out. And everybody who is at Rikers is suffering. Like I need to make that clear. There's no one who is not suffering at Rikers. And it starts to really sort of wear on your soul. And when people would come to see me, whether it was for like insomnia or, generalized somatic issues or anxiety, we got to work together. But I ultimately left in 2023 because I think from a macro level, I felt like I was upholding a system that I just couldn't justify it anymore, because I think I made the system look more palatable.
Oh, right, because it's like they're in here suffering, and it's like, well, we're providing these services for them.
We're providing these services, and they still need to
Yeah.
exist. Like, and also, don't get me wrong, those programs still need to exist because there are people who are still there. But
Right.
I just couldn't do it anymore, and somebody still needs to keep doing it. And that's why we all need to be showing up and doing our work, because this isn't something that a few people should be shouldering alone.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also think that the way it was implemented, just having the one program there at the jail, also it wasn't sufficient. We do these things inside systems. We offer just this little Band-Aid rather than really addressing the true issue that's happening, right? Within the system. So sorry, that was a lot to say. But.
No.
Yeah.
The question that comes to mind is, how did you get folks to trust you and to come to you?
A lot of folks didn't trust me at first. I think it helped that I used to volunteer. And so there were some officers who were really decent, who I think did a good job of talking me up, to be honest with you. There were some folks who knew me, who were incarcerated, who had seen me before, so they knew me. So I think because I had a little bit of credibility, that helped.
Right.
And there were some folks who just wanted to try it, because for whatever reason, whether it was just to get out of the dorm or their cell for a bit, or just to do something different, or they thought it might help. And so a lot of people came for a lot of different reasons, and not everybody liked it. I mean, that's also, I think, great to acknowledge as well, that not everybody liked it. And that, I think, was the most powerful thing, because I don't believe that there's any real safe spaces. And so, especially at a place like Rikers. So for people to be able to claim agency and say like, oh, I don't really like this. I was like, oh, fantastic. Great. You don't know what you can claim and say, I don't like this, and be able to say no. And an environment where somebody is trying to tell you what to do all of the time, I think was a very powerful thing. So
Yeah.
I think those were ways that I tried to foster trust.
Yeah. Yeah, and going back to there's no safe space, It was during your lesson that the term brave space, that's where I learned it. Because in a lot of well-intentioned spaces, we the idea of, yeah, this is a safe space. You can share, right? You really had me look at it in a different way. Can you elaborate a little bit more of why not a safe space, but maybe more so of a brave space for folks?
Yeah, I think I can appreciate the sentiment, especially around yoga and meditation teachers wanting to say that they offer this idea of a safe space for people to share or show up in a way where they feel like they can be themselves. But we don't know what people are really bringing. We don't know people's experiences, and we don't know how people feel when they are saying something. So to guarantee safety, I don't think can actually be done. But to say that a space is brave, so folks can show up to say the things that they need to say. And if we, as mindfulness and yoga teachers, know how to teach embodiment, so when people feel uncomfortable or feel discomfort, we know techniques to teach folks so they can deal with that discomfort. That's the bravery that we are teaching. That's the bravery that we're encouraging. And that's how people begin to find agency and to make decisions for themselves, where they're responding in moments and reacting and choosing for themselves how they'd like to show up in a space. And that's bravery, and that's courageous.
Yeah. I like that a lot. So brave spaces, not safe spaces.
Yeah.
So your time in prison,
Jail.
Rikers jail.
Yeah, so, and also too, maybe for folks who don't know, there's a difference between prison and jail. So jail is when folks are generally held temporarily awaiting trial. And at Rikers, folks were supposed to, if they were serving a sentence at Rikers, it was for a year or less. And prisons are for folks who are serving more than a year. I will say at Rikers, though, there are many people who were there for well over a few years, both awaiting trial. Lots of folks who were there for several years awaiting trial when I was working there, just because the court systems were overloaded. And then it got even worse when the pandemic happened and courts were shut down.
Yeah, thank you for that correction, and also for that call out too, because when I think about all the issues with Rikers Island and you hear in the news here, that's part of the reason is that it's been in the news is that people are saying they're way longer than they need to be.
Yes, I had so many folks that I worked with who had been there for 3, 4, 5, and even 6 years.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and jails are not set up to keep people for a long period of time, right? Prisons have different, and these are in real air quotes, like different comfort systems, because they are meant to keep people there longer. Jails are not.
It's a very good distinction.
Yeah.
Oh, like what did you learn? I know that you went there and you gave a lot of yourself. What did you learn from your time there?
That's such a good question. Thank you for. I'm always still thinking about what I learned. I learned that no one is one thing. I learned that no one is one thing. As a volunteer, I went in once a week and I was there for maybe 3 hours, 4 hours. As a full-time employee, I was there every day for 8 hours a day. It's a very different place when you are there every day, 8 hours a day. You get to know people, not just folks who are incarcerated, but staff and officers as well. And I had this view, this very reductive view of officers at Rikers. It was them against me. And I was the great social justice person going in there teaching yoga and mindfulness, which is also so cringy to say out loud. And like, it's like me and my yoga mat changing the world. So gross to think about. And they were the bad officers, and people who are incarcerated were all, victims of injustice. Like it was all of these tropes that I first created in my head about everything that was going on. And that was probably a coping mechanism for me to go in and do the work. But it's so much messier than all of that. And that is really important to acknowledge, because we will not change anything if we try to pretend and put people into boxes.
Yeah.
People are marginalized, and folks do terrible things and need to be held accountable. People may not want to be an officer but need to feed their kids. Our system of justice exists and it needs to be dismantled, but we can't just wreck it all, and we have to figure out how to do all of that.
Right.
And being there 8 hours a day, that all collided for me in the most awful and fantastic way, for me to look at people as individuals and for me to check my own shit. And that's when metta and mindfulness really came into play.
Yeah.
And I just had to show up every single day and do the best that I could do.
Well, that's one heck of a lesson to take from your time, right? That's
Yeah, it really,
powerful.
it completely changed my life. And I am still unpacking a lot of the trauma from that place. And I'm still grateful that I did that, because I look at the world differently because of that. I can see things outside of a binary because of that.
Yeah.
People, like, especially with the officers, and I think that was my really big lesson. It was, I just wanted to put them over there, because that is so easy to do, to put people over there and hate them.
Right.
And I had that done to me, and I realized I was using the same tools of white supremacy to cope with being there that had been placed on me, and that wasn't going to change anything. So I had to unpack and decolonize myself to work inside that system. But in doing that, I recognized that was not going to work inside that system, because that system needed to be abolished. And it was going to destroy me if I thought I could just do that on my own. And that's part of what played into me leaving. The very work of decolonizing myself made me realize, like, I can't be here. This is crazy. This is crushing me.
Yeah.
I feel like your story is similar to probably so many of us take on something and we show up and we think we know what we're going to do, or like our place and like how we're going to fit in and how it's, you know, how it's going to look. And then it just kind of like all goes to shit when you get there. You're like, never mind. I had no idea what I was thinking or talking about. And this was actually very humbling.
And now let me just try to figure out my way through it. Absolutely. That's so true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I truthfully, I came to yoga and meditation because I took on a really tough public school teaching job that sent me to the depths and like gave me panic disorder, essentially, you know, long story short. But same thing, I walked in there thinking I knew what I was going to do. And like I understood the same public school system has, you know, obviously there's a lot to say about that as well. And I kind of like walked in thinking I knew what I was going to do and how I was going to help these people in the situation. And yeah, I fell flat on my ass. So when you were discussing that, I thought, oh yeah.
Yeah, I've actually, Rikers, the women's jail where I worked, really looks like a really bad public high school. I mean, it looks like that. And I don't think it's an accident, you know. Yeah, I thought I knew what I was going to do as well. I'm really grateful, though, that I worked with the people that I worked with the wellness program. Our program was inside a very small clinic. So it was a little oasis in the midst of chaos. That was the women's jail. So we each had our own little offices. There were the clinic also had 2 intimate partner violence counselors. There were 2 methadone counselors, and then there was a doctor who treated chronic illness and also worked with gender nonconforming folks too with meds. So we were kind of a special place inside that environment. And the doctors who I worked with, who supported the program were amazing. And they let us have free reign in the work that we did. And it's just everything else around it. You know, it's like trying to stop a tidal wave, you know, with like a piece of paper.
Yeah.
It just becomes so impossible, and you realize what you're up against. And it's just, it's Sisyphean, you know, you just roll the rock up the hill thinking you're doing something, it just rolls back down. You're just doing it every day.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting. And I know from folks who I still stay in touch with that it was also helpful, right? So it's complicated.
It's like the two truths can exist, right?
Yeah.
It's like traumatizing, but also provided you with so much insight. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing about your time and your lessons there. I want to loop back towards the beginning of our conversation. You spoke briefly about being Black, being queer, and how that itself has been a journey for you. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how that has impacted your practice as well?
I think, yeah, sure. I think think about this a lot and try not to think about it at the same time. You know, I think just by showing up in spaces as I am, I think representation matters.
Absolutely.
So that's important, and I'm grateful for that. I know the first time that I showed up as a Black yoga teacher at Rikers, people were like, "You're a yoga teacher?" Because they hadn't seen a Black yoga teacher before. So those things I think are really important. And I think when it comes to being Black and queer, my practice holds me and helps me make space for navigating how the world is. I know when I first discovered mindfulness, it was really helpful for me to hold space for myself. But I did feel like, as I mentioned, when I discovered METTA, I really stepped into loving myself. And La Murad Owens talks about this idea of adaptive intersectional mindfulness. And it sort of takes mindfulness through a social justice lens. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he says that this idea of mindfulness can help us tell the truth of who we are. And I think that's what my practice did for me, because when I was taught mindfulness, it was generally from this perspective of whiteness and white teachers. So I didn't see myself. And then sort of reading this other idea of mindfulness, helping to tell the truth of who I was, I started to say, like, well, this is how I'm showing up into this space with these kinds of experiences. And I want to talk about who I am and how my identity impacts the world as a teacher. And often, even when I went through my meditation teacher training, there were elements of that I was told to silence, even not directly, but this idea of when we're told, like, not to bring politics into teaching. My identity is considered political. So those ideas of not bringing politics in is erasure. And so my practice supports me, and I won't allow myself to show up small. I allow every single piece of me to be in a space. And if those aren't things that people can handle, then I'm not the teacher for them.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it's really important that you mentioned about bringing politics into yoga, because here on this podcast, we say politics isn't everything, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the fabric of our life.
because it can feel so separate. Politics can feel so separate than what we're doing in our day-to-day life, but also it shapes how we do things in our day-to-day life. There was a concept of spiritual activism that you spoke about during our training. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, spiritual activism is this concept that our spirituality should inform the world that we live in, and we should use our spirituality to change the world. And I can't remember, and I should be able to remember the person who came up with this concept, because this is not my concept. I want to say it was an Afro-Latina teacher, and a concept that came about, I want to say, in the late 70s. But it's this idea that spirituality should inform us, and should say, it should help us to change and be a catalyst for changing the world. Because if not, what's the point? It goes back to that, what we were talking about earlier with Loka Samastao Sukhino Bhavantu. Contemplative practices shouldn't just be about staring at your navel and navel gazing and thinking about things over and over again, but it should prompt us and move us to do something, anything, to cause less harm in the world. Even when that is, how am I showing up in the world? I think sometimes people think these gestures have to be grand, and it looks different for every person. But how are we going to show up right now? What is the small way that I can show up and shift change? And when it's small, I can do it every day and make that impact over and over and over again. Even if it's as simple as when somebody says something, us saying, that's not okay to say, and knowing that that's how we're going to show up.
Right.
I wanted to take a moment to interject. I was in yoga spaces for a long time and meditation, and I kind of 2020, when COVID hit, and being in New York, I'm not sure how it was experienced there, but there was kind of this big shift. It was like the anti-vax movement, and that you just saw all this very, like, I don't know, warping of messaging. I mean, ultimately, I saw a lot of people go towards Trump, like in the yoga community, and maybe not even around me, but it just seemed to be this thing. And for me, it kind of made me step back completely, because I thought, I don't want to be involved with this. And I don't want to be involved in this, like, using these messages to warp into, like, supporting Trump or, being harmful in medical ways towards other people. And so I really appreciate the things that you're saying, because I've definitely kind of almost walked away from yoga because I felt like the message was so lost where I was at times. I mean, I had some good studios and some great people, but I definitely felt like I lost myself.
There's a really great article. Is it in the New Yorker last month that talks about the movement, the large movement to the right in the wellness world, and that happened during COVID with the anti-vax movement and people moving to Trump under this guise of freedom.
Yeah. Yes.
It was this thought of freedom, and I've always been on the outskirts of the yoga world, because I didn't feel like I fit in. I think part of that was my own putting myself on the outskirts. I think growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and then also being queer, right? And
Sure.
Because lots of times I was told, even from the queer community, that I wasn't queer enough because, I dated men too, and then I wasn't Black enough, and all of these things. And then with the yoga and meditation world, like, I thought it was supposed to be a safe space, right? Going back to that idea of false safety, and then really recognizing, of course, it's going to be exactly like the real world, because why wouldn't it be? Because people from the world are inside those spaces, so they're bringing with them their own stuff. So hanging out on the fringes of those worlds, I never got too entrenched, but when I would see it coming up in trainings, and when I would ask questions in the way that it was pushed back, it was disheartening. And it took me a long time to feel brave enough to reach out and connect and find my people. But when I did, I felt really comfortable, and I'm grateful that I took the time to find who my yoga and meditation people were. And I think having strong teachers who are so strong in their practice, like Reverend Cato Williams, and Lamarad Owens, and teachers who stand strong in their practice, and Diane Bondi, who's a fat black yoga teacher at the time, and she was really talking about like what it means to show up in these spaces, allowed me to feel brave,
Right.
so I
Yeah.
could show up in those spaces. And if you can't find those places, that you start to make it, and people start to find you. But I don't think we should stay in places where we aren't seen, and I don't feel like we need to be obligated to always change those spaces either. I just don't.
Right. Yes.
I think it's just such a good reflection of this practice that is ancient and powerful and transformative, and knowing that there's still these spaces that can say, like, on the surface, we practice yoga and we are all good feels and vibes, but people can really muck things up.
Yes.
They can really muck things up, and then we're still living, as you mentioned earlier, where things are really being guided with white supremacy. So it makes sense that in these spaces,
Right.
white supremacy would also show up as well.
Yeah.
Yep. And misogyny and
Yes.
and all of the things that I think happen. I think that we do need to also find community. I used to try to practice so much by myself. And I think that's because I was afraid to also put myself out there, because I was afraid of rejection. I was afraid of that discomfort. And that was a part of my own practice that I had to embody, because we do need to also take risk, right?
Yeah.
Especially now, we have to take risk if we're going to change things.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't operate in this zone of safety. And I think I wanted my practice because it made me feel safe inside my body. I wasn't sure at first how to take that risk out there, but I started to learn that I needed to jump off the cliff and find places where I could find my people. And it didn't always work out, because,
Yeah.
there are certainly places where I thought I was finding my people because they were Black or they were queer, and they were jerks too. Like, that's okay. And I can be a jerk. All of those things can be true. And it shouldn't still stop us from reaching out, because we will not do this by ourselves. Like, we need each other.
Yeah,
We need to
absolutely.
have these conversations. We need to be in community. Like, we are not going to shift the world by staying inside our houses and chanting Om and doing yoga. Mindfulness alone is nonsense. Like, yoga is not
Yeah.
going to change the world. Teaching yoga at Rikers isn't going to change the world. People need food, people need jobs, people need homes,
Yep.
right? That's
Yes.
what people need.
Yes.
People need those things. Practices give people agency. Practices give me agency, so we can show up collectively and then fight for the shit we really need.
That's right. That's
Yes. Yes. Yes.
so good. So good.
I'm just grateful to see so many more Black, brown, women, queer folks coming into mindfulness, yoga, and spiritual spaces just as they are, and just questioning things. It just makes me excited, and it makes me hopeful, because I think we need to hold on to hope, and remembering that we need to have our practices to keep us fueled and to keep us moving forward, and not letting what we're fighting against seep inside us. So, what's that great Audre Lorde quote? The master's tools will not dismantle the master's house. And that can be easy to forget when you're caught up and fighting all of the time.
Right.
So that folks remember their joy practices, remember to have fun, remember pleasure, like remember pleasure,
Yeah.
like seek pleasure more than ever, right? What did Alice
Yeah.
Walker say? Hard times require furious dancing. So
Yes.
I like that. I like that.
we need that. And I think that's
Yeah.
that's an important part Like, we are not going to get through all of this stuff just by fighting.
Yeah.
Well, we usually like to ask our guests to talk about what tools that people can put in their toolboxes for their everyday life to handle just, the political climate. And I feel like you've answered that, like joy,
Yeah.
playfulness, dance. Is there anything else that you would add to a toolbox?
Yeah, I would add acknowledging that you are taking time to do something, because I think it's the intention. I think we do things to take care of ourselves more than we think, but we don't call it the thing. So we're forgetting that we do it, right? Like, even our mothers and our grandmothers did these things, but they didn't necessarily call it that. If it's writing or knitting or cooking, it gives me a lot of pleasure. I love to cook. And we got to cook to eat. So is there a way that there's a part of making a meal for yourself that becomes, your way of making some magic? Is there a way that you shower that becomes, ritual or ceremony for you? It's not about necessarily creating moments of practice, but how can we incorporate practice into what we're already doing? And I think that's what makes it accessible. So it's not like this thing that I have to do,
Right.
but it's how am I honoring what I'm already doing and making it special for me?
That's so tangible. Like that's so doable, When you said the showering, I was like, yeah, that makes sense,
Even
Acknowledging
washing
it.
your hands can be ritual. Pouring yourself a cup of coffee, how we drink water. Can we approach these things in a way that allows us to take that pause? Can we remember when we're drinking water that we have people across the world right now who don't have it?
Yeah.
So the gratitude that we can give ourselves and send that message of prayer that they get it can be soul shifting.
Yeah.
Oneika,
I feel like these are great.
I'm loving
I
this.
feel like these are great tools for somebody who's maybe, because, we have different people listening. And so maybe somebody's never toyed with mindfulness or yoga before, but it's like, this is what you can do.
Yeah. Yoga is not just a downward dog and child's
It's
pose.
not. It's not. It's how
Yeah.
you live. It's what you say before you open the door.
Yeah.
May I have a day where I'm less harmful? May I have a day that I'm just less of a jerk? May I not be a jerk in the first 5 minutes when I wake up in the morning? That's my prayer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned ritual. I say to my husband all the time, like, ritual's so important, and we don't do it, and we don't have ritual. So I feel like we've gotten away from that of sometimes just, owning the things that we do with love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so fortunate. I had dinner with my family growing up, like every night. I did not appreciate how unusual that was until I got older.
Yeah.
And realized
Yeah.
how many people didn't do that. I mean, dinner every night was something that we did. And for a long time when I was growing up, my parents were not religious or spiritual. My dad was a scientist and my mom's an atheist. But Sunday mornings, I would wake up to the sound of jazz and breakfast being on the stove. And we had Sunday breakfast. Like, that was a thing that we did. And I will never forget it.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Oneika, thank you for your time, for your words of wisdom, for sharing. Before we wrap up, in the bio that I was reading, you have a memoir coming up. So
Yes.
plug yourself in. Tell us a little bit about that.
I do. My book is called Sit With Me, A No BS Journey to Mindfulness and Meditation. And HarperOne Books is publishing it, and it's due out in March 2026, but pre-orders will be available at the end of June. And it's about metta. It's mostly about metta. And it's about my time at Rikers and a little bit about my own journey, about how I try to show up in the world. And I'm grateful that I had an opportunity to write it. It gave me a chance to reflect on my time about Rikers. I'm really excited. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to admit that I was a writer, even though I've been doing it for most of my life. And yeah, I'm excited to share that with the world, and hopefully folks find a way to remember to fall in love with themselves.
It sounds like there's a lot of love and intention that went into that book. So I'm looking forward to reading it.
Oh, thank you, thank you,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. I want to say congratulations.
Yeah.
It's exciting that
Thank
you have
you.
you have a book coming out.
Yeah.
I'm
Big
looking
deal.
forward to it. Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Definitely have to check that out.
Absolutely. Well, where can folks find you?
They can find me on Instagram at Oneika Mays, and also you can find me on Substack.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
And we'll link that in our episode description
Cool.
afterwards. Yeah.
Well, once again, thank you for your time, Oneika. And I want to keep in touch. I want to keep learning from you.
Oh, this was so great. I'm grateful that you all had me on. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're grateful. We're grateful to have you.
Absolutely.
All right, listeners, if you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much. Hopefully you absorbed everything. Listen, put this episode on repeat, okay? Let things sink in.
I already know multiple people that are going to listen to this, I think, multiple times.
Yeah.
So shout out. And I'll add, you can find us on Instagram at navigatethenow. And our email, if you want to reach out, is the same handle at navigatethenow@gmail.com. And we always say, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying our content.